תדאג, אל תפחד, אל תיפול, תן לי יד. נלך ביחד לאורך כל הדרך, לא חשוב מה היה, העיקר תחייך. בדיוק, בדיוק ולא בערך, יש רק אחד שיודע את מה שיהיה, ומה שהיה וגם מה שבינתיים. אל תוותר, אל תישבר, תראה שהכל עובד, כי אלוקים גדול, כל יכול, אל תדאג, הכל יהיה בסדר, אלוקים.
Welcome back to Dhel Amot Shel Halacha En Lo LaKadosh Baruch Hu Be'olam El Arba Amot Shel Halacha Bilvad. We are in Siman Reish Tzadik Tet Halacha Yud. This will be the final halacha for this Siman. This will be part 1. Today we want to speak about a very important halacha where a lot of people overlook this halacha, knowingly or unknowingly. A lot of times you have men that they leave the shul right after mincha and they go home. What are the chances that they're praying Aravit? I don't know. What about women that they don't daven Aravit? How do they start doing malacha after Shabbat is out? Or what about your own children? We want to see today that even though the time of Shabbat has come to an end, and now it's already after Shabbat, it does not necessarily allow you to go ahead and do malacha even though Shabbat is out. When Shabbat comes in, you don't have a choice but to accept Shabbat automatically. But when Shabbat comes out, it actually stays on you until you escort it out. So this is what we want to try to see today. What can one do in order to do malacha? Whenever I use the word malacha, understand it's one of the forbidden labors that one is not allowed to do on Shabbat. So the Shulchan Aruch says, Asur lasot shum malacha kodem sheyavdil. It is forbidden for a person to do any work before he does Havdalah. Clear halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. That means, if you come home and you're not doing Havdalah for your wife, or if she didn't say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, she is not allowed to do any form of work. We'll see what the Mishnah is going to say that is only from the rabbis, but the Pshar is, the understanding of the Shulchan Aruch is, you're not allowed to do any form of work after Shabbat is out until you say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, or if you're going to daven Shemona Esrei, where you have the Atachon Antanu blessing inside of it, or if you're going to go ahead and do Havdalah. Other than that, Rabotai, it is Asur Be'isur Gomer to do any form of halacha. I've seen it many times. People, they don't go to shul, right? They'll stay home. Rabotai, I'm not going to sit and make like I don't know. I went one time to a person's house, an elderly gentleman, maybe in his 60s, 65. I said, why don't you come to shul? Look, sometimes he comes, sometimes he doesn't come. He says, I was sleeping. I said, okay, did you do Havdalah? No. Did you say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'chol? He's like, what's that? So I said, how are you watching TV? Right? How are you doing, how's your wife cooking? I thought Shabbat is out. Just because the time for Shabbat has come to an end, it does not mean the Shabbat is out. Shabbat comes out only once you escort it. And that's what we want to try to learn today, B'li. The Shulchan Aruch says, Asur lasot shum malacha kodem sheyavdil. It is forbidden for a person to do any form of work before he does Havdalah. Ve'im ivdil b'tefillah. What happens if a person went ahead and he did Havdalah inside the Shemona Esrei? Mutar, he's allowed to go ahead and he's allowed to do forbidden malacha. Afa pisha dain lo hivdil ala kos. Even though he still did not do Havdalah on a cup of wine. The Shulchan Aruch is telling us like this. If a person went ahead and he said Atachon Antanu in Shemona Esrei, which is the Havdalah for the Shemona Esrei, once you say this, even though you didn't say the other Havdalah, meaning on the cup of wine, he says you're allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to do Malacha. The Shulchan Aruch continues, what happens if he needs to do Malacha before being able to daven Shemona Esrei? That's another halacha now. If a person needs to do malacha before he's going to do Havdalah in the Shemona Esrei, אומר המבדיל בין הקודש ובין החול. בלא ברכה ועושה מלאכה. He should say, ברוך המבדיל בין הקודש ובין החול, without Hashem's name, ועושה מלאכה, and then he's allowed to go ahead and do מלאכה. Now we need to understand something very important over here. This halacha is speaking like this. First case was, point A was, you're not allowed to do any form of malacha after Shabbat is out until you do Havdalah. Case number 2 is, if you went out and you did Havdalah in the tefillah, you're already allowed to automatically do malacha, even though you didn't do the kosher bracha, because you'll get to it. But right now, let's say you want to drive home, or whatever it is, Rabotai. You know, you want to, I don't know, you want to turn the light in the shul, things like that. Fine. Once you said Atacho Notanu, you are allowed to go ahead and do malacha, even though you didn't say the bracha on the kosher Havdalah. Now the Shulchan Aruch is saying another point. What happens if a person has to do malacha before he's going to be able to say the Havdalah in the Shemona Esrei? So basically Shabbat is out. But now, let's say for example he got a delivery. So he has to sign his name. And they're not going to leave it if he's not going to sign it. What should he do? So the Shulchan Aruch tells us, let him say, Hamavdil ben HaKodesh uben HaChol b'lo b'racha v'aseh malacha. Let him say that Hashem separates between the holy and between the mundane without Hashem's name, and then let him go in and do the malacha. Rabotai will see, according to the Sephardim, it's Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh lechol. Not ben HaKodesh uben HaChol. No. It's Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh lechol. One more time. Not Baruch HaMavdil ben HaKodesh uben HaChol. We don't have two bens. We have one ben. Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh lechol. Finish. And then you're allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to do malacha. Once again, when is that? That is specifically where I did not daven Shemona Esrei and I had to do malacha before davening Shemona Esrei. V'chen nashim, and so to women, she'enan mavdilin betefillah, that they don't do Havdalah in Shemona Esrei. Yesh lelamdam sheyomru hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, kodem sheyasu malacha. You should teach them that they should say hamavdil ben kodesh lechol before they're going to do any malacha. Comes out of here a woman who, Rabotai, who does not do Havdalah in the Shemona Esrei. Why doesn't she do Havdalah in the Shemona Esrei? For one simple reason. Because women don't necessarily daven Aravit. Ashkenazim have a different law. Sephardim have a different law. Ashkenazim, they'll hold 3 days. 3 times in a day. Sephardim hold 1 time per day. But we'll see, the Mishnah is going to tell us that Amot Shabbat, even majority of the women, they don't even daven Aravit of Mot Shabbat. If they don't daven Aravit of Mot Shabbat, so how are they doing Malacha after Shabbat? That's why he says you should teach the woman to say the bracha Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh lechol. Once they say those words, they are allowed to go ahead and do full-fledged Malacha. Now, V'yesh Omrim, there are those that say, now this Yesh Omrim is going back on what we had mentioned in the previous 2 lines, where we said over there, V'im tzarich la'asod malacha kodem shivdil b'tefillah, that if a person needs to do malacha before being able to say the Havdalah inside the Shemona Esrei, he should say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh l'chol. So this Yesh Omrim won't say like this. No, the whole zeh, this that we tell you, you have to say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh l'chol because you didn't daven Arvit yet. All this is where b'melacha gimura, a complete act, a complete forbidden act. For example, he says Kigon, for example, Kotev v'orek, which is one of the 39 malachot. For example, he says writing or weaving. Aval hadlakat anir ba'ama. Again, lighting the candle also is actually fire. But what I want to show you is meaning, I should maybe define it better. When it says malacha gimura, complete malacha, meaning there is actual physical work, labor involved. For example, writing, you're working. Weaving, you're working. But lighting a candle, what's that? You didn't do anything almost. So basically, there's no exertion on your part. That's what he says. However, he says to go ahead and just to light a candle in general. But if you want to try to carry something from a private domain into a public domain on Shabbat, or from a public domain or into a private domain, you don't need to say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh Lezeh. A person wants to go ahead and he wants to light after Shabbat. They wanna not cooking it, Rabotai, let's just say they wanna just turn on the fire. Yeah, they wanna turn on a candle, they wanna turn on the fire, whatever it might be. No problem. They're allowed to do it, according to this opinion. But to go to do real malacha, like for example, writing or weaving, where it's an act, it's a work. Over there, we're going to tell you, you're going to have to say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. But what about lighting a candle? It's also malacha that's asur to light on Shabbat. You're right, but it doesn't require any exertion on your end. So then we're going to tell you over there, you're allowed to go ahead and light a candle after Shabbat without even saying Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. And not only that, it says, what happens if you want to take out from a private to a public domain? You, for example, right now, you're that type of person that doesn't carry on Shabbat. Now you want to leave the shul, and you still didn't daven Aravit, but you want to go home, and you want to carry some stuff with you. According to the Yesh Omrim, he's going to allow you to go ahead and carry from private to public, even though you didn't say the words Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. We'll see, Rabotai, what we hold completely opposite. Be'ezrat Hashem, Rabotai, we'll see everything in the following class. ומזה מתפשט המנהג להקל שמדליקים נרות מיד שאמרו הקהל ברוך הוא. He said that from this, the minhag, the custom spread, to be lenient to light the candles immediately once the kahal, once the congregation says the word Baruch Hu. Aval ha'ikar kasvara rishon, but the main halacha is going to be the main reasoning. The main halacha is going to be like the first opinion. Aval ha'ikar kasvara rishon, but the main halacha is going to be like the first opinion, that if a person had to do malacha before he's going to daven Shemona Esrei, he has to first go ahead and say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. V'yesh omrim, and there are those that say Lidlot Mayim B'chol Mot Shabbat, that one should go ahead to a well and he should try to draw water on every Motzei Shabbat. Why? Ki be'era shel Miriam sovev kol Motzei Shabbat kol ha'be'erot, because the well of Miriam, it goes around every single Motzei Shabbat through all of the wells. So basically makes circles. Anybody's going to come across this well where the well of Miriam passed through it. Basically, according to what the Ramah is saying, it's every single well. Automatically, the well of Miriam goes through all the waters, all the wells in the world. Anybody's going to come across it. He's going to drink from it. He's going to be healed from all his sicknesses, from all his pain. However, the Ramah says, I haven't seen anybody do this minhag. Look above, look on top, Siman Reish Samech Gimel in Siman 263. Mi shemosiv mechol hakodesh im mutar lomar l'achar shivdil asod lo malacha. If somebody went ahead and he added from the chol onto the kodesh, if he's allowed to go ahead and he's allowed to tell somebody else who already did Havdalah to ask him to go ahead and do malacha for him. Rabotai, is this halacha? But another, we will see it in the following shurim. But all he's saying right now, like this: what happens if a person is holding Rabbeinu Tam? Can he tell somebody else who already did Havdalah to do malacha for him? So I hold Rabbeinu Tam. Somebody else holds like the Geonim. He's a half an hour earlier than me. Can I tell him turn on the light for me? Can I tell him, cook for me? Am I allowed to go ahead and tell him these things? He says, look into Siman Reish Samech Gimel. Bezrat Hashem, we will see that in the following classes. But, Rabotai, I want to conclude over here. I just wanted to read the Shulchan Aruch to get the halacha out there. Tomorrow, will follow through. But let's just see a few points. Point number one, you're not allowed to do any form of malacha before you do Havdalah. But what happens if you went there and you did Havdalah in the Shemon Esrei, like we explained? You're allowed to do any form of malacha, even though you didn't do it on the koshel bracha. You didn't do Havdalah on a cup of wine. What happens if a person needs to do the malacha before Shemon Esrei? He should say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh lechol. We spoke about the woman that since they don't do Havdalah in their tefillah, you should teach them that they should say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh lechol before they do any forbidden labor. And there are those that said, we saw that there's an opinion that goes against the previous opinion where we had mentioned that if a person did not daven, he should go ahead and say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh lechol. This yesh omrim this, and they say, when are we going to tell you that you should say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh lechol? That's if you're doing complete malacha, for example, writing and weaving. But to light a candle and just merely light a candle, or to carry from one domain to another domain, we're going to tell you there's no need to go ahead and say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh lechol. But we saw that there is a minhag that came out from this to be lenient, to light the candles immediately after the congregation says Baruchum. However, the Ramah conclude, and that's how we hold Halacha Rabotai, Ha'ikar Kasvara Rishona. The main Halacha is going to be like the first opinion, that one must say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh lechol before he does any form of malacha. Then we did see that there's those that say person should draw water from a well on Motzei Shabbat. Since the well of Miriam goes around through all the wells, anybody who comes across it and he drinks from it, he will be healed. Ramah said, I didn't see nobody do this. And then we left off with the question in Siman Rish Tamar Gimel B'Lener, we'll see that in the upcoming classes, that if somebody added from the Chol to the Kodesh, meaning he added onto his Shabbat, he's using the weekday minutes to make them into Kadosh, into Shabbat minutes, and somebody else already took out Shabbat. Is he allowed to ask him for him to do full-fledged malachot for him? This B'Lener we'll see in the upcoming classes. Rabotai, have a great day. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen. Amen.